Again, my name is Dave Cooper, and I want to thank you for your hospitality, for the opportunity to talk to you this evening about my candidacy. Recently, my only child, my daughter, gave me a brand new grandson. I referenced that before. His name is Oliver. He's 9 months old. And I posted on my campaign website that the future is never more present than when you stare into the eyes of your grandchild. And what we're talking about here, what the campaign for 2018 is really about the future. But it's informed by what has happened in the recent past. And I'm going to talk somewhat about that. So I want to introduce myself to you as a candidate for basically the first time, talk about why I've decided to run, what are the issues as I see them, what are my own issues that I think are important to consider, and then ask for your consideration to vote for me. So let me start by saying the obvious. I'm a soldier. I serve in the forces that guard and defend our country and our way of life. And I'm prepared to give my life in your defense. That means that I speak the language of patriotism and sacrifice. When I came back from Operation Iraqi Freedom, I founded a humanitarian nonprofit organization. I speak the language of compassion and selfless service. I have worked at various levels of government, a small city, 2 urban counties, and finally retired from the United States Environmental Protection Agency in their hazardous waste cleanup program, normally called Superfund. I've also worked for a consortium of the 13 western states involved in commercializing solar, wind, geothermal, biomass. So I speak the language of public participation, cost-effective regulation, and legislation. I spent my own money to buy and to test new materials for energy efficiency and new techniques for applying them. And I designed and built my own passive solar home. So I speak the language of innovation and the language of creativity. And then I've been a Democrat for my entire life. I started voting in 1972. So in the past recent time, I have left my state to volunteer in 11 races in 8 states over the last 14 years. I have a bachelor's degree in political science. I have a master's degree in public administration. I speak the language of democracy. Now, I will say that everything that I have worked for in the last 40 years and change is at great risk. And I completely respect the comments that I heard before, which I was not expecting to hear, about how we want to be positive and look for the positive and all that. But what has caused me to run for office is because of the things that have happened in the last year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. That's what drives me to do this. I was retired. My intention was to live in Clayton, fat, dumb, and happy, and maybe, as I've done in the past, volunteer for races, other people's races, not my own. But with what's happened over the last year, and in particular the tax theft of 2017 that happened on December 2nd in the Senate, I said, oh no, I've got to run. And because this is the Georgia 9th, where 80% of the people are, or at least registered voters, are Republican, I thought, well, I have the skill set to actually maybe make a difference here, maybe help the conversation in such a way that we can convince, that I can convince, that you all can help me convince tens of thousands of Republicans to just maybe this time not vote for their normal candidate, what they would normally do. So what I want to do first is to hand out something that I copied for folks. It's underneath this. Recently, actually the March 2018 issue of the Atlantic magazine ran a story. It's titled Boycott the Republican Party. It's actually written by 2 guys from the Brookings Institute. One of the, and by the way, you can keep them, whoever wants them can keep them, I only made 10. The Brookings Institute people said, these are guys who have been, as it happens, they're guys. These are folks who have studied politics, they're experts, and they are rigorously nonpartisan in the things that they have published in the past. And what they write there in straightforward English is that Donald Trump and the Republican Party, the current Republican Party, are existential threats to democracy. Again, I recognize that people said that they were running to create something positive and good moving forward. I am driven by the information that I've had for a number of years and what I've observed, and the validation by articles like this. In my view, absolutely, democracy is at tremendous risk. We've been at risk before. We've been at risk of invasion from outside. We have been at risk from the breakdown of our government in the past, when there was open rebellion to try to control and protect and expand slavery. And in the 60s, as many of you will remember, we had political assassinations. Those were risks to democracy. We're seeing that now. And the pros, again, in that article and in other places, are saying that that is absolutely the risk. So that is why I'm running. So what I was going to do, when I was thinking I had 25 or 30 minutes, was read you a list that I cut down from 4 pages to 1.5 of the kinds of things that I have seen and that you all have seen. In a way, I'm preaching to the choir, and you don't need to know any more than everything that you've seen on CNN, everything that you've seen in the other MSNBC or on Time Magazine, Newsweek, all of that. So I'm actually not going to read all the things that make me mad, but I will tell you that my decision to run occurred on December 2nd, when the Congress passed, the Republican-controlled Congress, Senate, passed the tax theft of 2017 at 2 a.m. in the morning with notes in the margins, some of which were illegible. A bill that was put together by a handful of men, no women, to my knowledge, no minorities, certainly no Democrats. A law that was put together, a bill that was put together, and then shoved down the throats of America by the fact that the Republicans have control of the Senate. Now, yes, I'm running for the House, but of course they had to sign their own bill as well, and they certainly signed essentially the Senate's bill. There were some changes, but not too many. So that's why I decided that I absolutely needed to run. So that's basically who I am. That's what drove me to enter this race. So why do I think I'm a good candidate? Well, my job for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency was literally to walk into a room with angry and afraid people. People who were afraid because their children might have been injured by the contamination that had been in their communities for years. They were afraid for their own self as well and for the food that they might be eating. Angry people at other sites who were worried about their property values going down and worried about the land use, what they would be prevented from doing with their property or nearby property, things like that. So that was my job for almost 2 years, or two decades, was to conduct those meetings, to facilitate. I trained as a facilitator, to work with people who naturally are not going to agree with you. Does anybody think that there's a group of people, say 80% of the Georgia Ninth, who might not agree with our positions on most things and who hold all the cards? It's not about giving a speech. It's not about making a list of here's my issues and wouldn't it be cool if we could do these things. That is what every politician is taught to do. I am an unconventional candidate, and I will be running an unconventional campaign because I've got to convince 20, 30, 40,000 Republicans to change their mind, and at least in 18 and at least in 20 to vote for a Democrat. And I have the skills and the experience to have those conversations, to create a safe space for them to say, all I believe in is guns. I'm a single-issue voter. In my experience, there is no such thing as a single-issue voter. Not one person only thinks of one thing. They're told they're a single-issue voter so that they can be manipulated into only thinking about one thing when they go to the polls, but that is not who they are, and it is my job to make them see that there is much more to our political life, our economic life, our social life, than the one thing that they think trumps everything. Sorry to use the word Trump. It just came out. I want to do 2 other things very quickly. I want to point out this book. Democracy in Chains. If you have had any question in your mind, how did we get here? This is the book that'll tell you. It's written by an historian, Duke University. It was a highly rated book, Nancy McLean. And in the back of the document that I sent, the very last page, I've quickly written her name. So, to get to my issues, as the time runs down, I think they can be grouped into basically three categories. Save democracy, protect what we hold dear, and then progress, or the future. So I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. To save democracy, clean elections. Absolutely. Term limits, stopping fake news. There is a problem in this nation, and it prevents us from moving forward, which is tens of millions of people think that a propaganda station that they listen to religiously is a news station, and that they can trust the things that are being said. That is not true, and it will be part of my job to show them and convince them that, in fact, that is not true. If I had more time, I would certainly talk about some of that strategy now. Protecting the Mueller investigation. Very important. We need to prove to everybody, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the Russians did what all of our intelligence agencies have said is happening, which is the Russians are influencing people to vote in a bad way. And reversing Citizens United. With the dirty money, the dark money that comes in, we can't have the democracy that we need. Protect things that we hold dear is the second category. Saving the social safety net, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Protecting the fabric of life, stopping and reversing global warming. Securing a woman's control over her own body is key. And we hold that dear. I'll tell you, even though I'm running out of time, I'm going to say this. If there was a federal law that said a man had to have a colonoscopy, there would be riots in the streets. Men, by definition, know that they have full control over their body. Part of the Second Amendment discussion has to do with men having the ability to do whatever they want. Women need to have the same rights as men. That absolutely has to happen. Thanking our veterans by supporting our veterans. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. And then serving our small businesses. More than half of the people who are employed, non-farm workers who are employed by small businesses. The Georgia 9th is filled with small businesses. It has no major, or if it does, it's very few, major employers. So we need to take care of those folks. And finally, progress. Absolutely, in the loudest voice I can say, universal health care. Whether it is single payer or whether it is expanding the 90% of the people who are covered now, whatever it is, we have to get it done. Universal health care. Confirming LGBT rights. They are Americans. They deserve the same rights as anyone else. Common sense. Gun control. This is Josh's big issue, and I support him 100%. 100%. Common sense gun control. Safety, gun safety. Clean energy. Affordable education. Not free education. Until we can get health care for everybody, don't talk to me about free education for everyone. We can only do what we can do with the money we have available in the political climate that we have. Ending labor exploitation, saving fast internet, prison reform, fair taxes, and more, and I plan to do all of that. So in closing, let me say that Doug Collins should not be making rules for anyone. Anyone. We are trying to do with this election, prevent us from having a dictatorship, losing our democracy to dictatorship, either by the wealthy or by the Russians through Republican surrogates. I have a plan to win the Georgia 9th. My website is Cooper, the number 4, CongressGA.com. Remember, the end game is November 6th. You're voting on May 22nd, who is the best person to do the things that I've described to you tonight. That is the task on May 22nd. It is November 6th. And finally, remember, please remember, voting is a chess move, not a Valentine. You need to pick the person who can beat Doug Collins and who has a plan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Josh, you get extra time because I cheated and I went long.
You did very well. You did very well. David, stay up there.
All right, I just wanted to, I didn't want anything that I might want to throw at people, so I moved it out of the way. I await your questions.
As far as a congressional representative or candidates reach on purely local matters. What do you see in the 9th District that resonates with voters?
Well, as I think probably everybody here knows, the Congress finally passed a law, I think in 2011, that said no more pork. Now, we understand that there's still ways of getting around that stuff. But the old days of a candidate being able to stand here and say, I'm going to get you a new hospital, ma'am, and you want that road repaved? I'm not even going to repave it. I'm going to tear it out. I'm going to build you a new one. And I'm going to work and cut deals in the Congress and all of that to make those things happen. Well, those days are gone. And and I will say it, because you're all thinking it, as a new candidate, I've spent very little time trying to figure out how I can still somehow get things directly sent to the Georgia 9th. But what I can say is this. Most of the issues that I have talked about are issues that affect not just the Georgia 9th. They affect everyone. I've been all across the United States. I've been in all 50 states. The last one I did was Kentucky when I was trying to get rid of Mitch McConnell for the last 6 weeks of that election. Sorry, I failed. But I have talked with so many people. I've lived or volunteered in over a dozen states. And what's amazing to me is, even though there is a unique character and a unique beauty and smart people here, those smart people are also in Arkansas, and they're also in Iowa, and they're also in the suburbs of, let's say, Pennsylvania 18th, that just went for the Democrats. Thank you, Donald Trump, for making that happen. He came out and, he campaigned, and the Democrats won. So the specific for what can I do that is specific to the Georgia 9th, I have yet to figure that out. And I will continue to ask people, what is it that you think you need? I'm in a mostly listening mode at this point because, I declared myself only in the last few months. So that's the message. It's a message I've delivered at a couple of counties now, which is I'm still listening. Other question? Or are you going to be calling on folks, or do I?
Pardon?
Are you going to call on folks, or do I?
No, it's open. Anyone who has
Okay,
questions.
this gentleman raised his hand.
Yeah, I guess my question is more really specific to Fannin County, not even just the 9th District, but recently the local hospital announced that they were going to stop doing deliveries on babies and then focus on the more needed, probably, I'm assuming they're going to go to geriatrics care or something that's more relevant to this community. But
I didn't say that. Just keep in mind.
I'm only speculating.
This candidate did not say.
I'm only speculating. I don't know. But anyways, really my point is that's kind of an indication that, we appear to be losing a great deal more even than I thought, young people that are not coming back here once they're done with school or whatever. As a candidate, and as if you were elected, do you have any specific plans to try to kind of maybe inject a little vigor into the local economy to help change that direction?
Well, there's a couple things there. One, I want to speak specifically to the health thing. When we get universal health care, we will have so many more ways to protect the existing health infrastructure that is slowly, or maybe not so slowly, depends on your point of view, slowly leaving this area. But in terms of keeping people here to have their families and to have their children, so you'll get more pediatric work and things like that, one of the ways we can do that here, which is different than in many places, is we can encourage small businesses. This is a great place. It's a huge tourist place. It's a huge retirement place. It's a service-related industry. So the Small Business Administration is designed to help those kinds of businesses. It's not designed to build another General Motors or something like that, or another Microsoft. It's designed to help the small businesses. And when I've gone into the squares in the various counties, in the towns that are there, and I just naturally look, and I see, are all the storefronts open, or are some of them closed down and shuttered? So I think the point I was making about energizing the Small Business Administration to do more support, more outreach, and also, although I didn't cover it at the time, but I want to say, other countries have been very successful in doing microloans. And I think by doing microloans, you can keep those small businesses active and thriving and feeding into the local economy. And that's part of what makes people stay. So that's my,
Just real quickly, who's the micro lender if you're gonna do that? I mean, how's that gonna work?
in the ones that I'm aware of are done in other countries. So they're done through the auspices of like the State Department and all of that. It's a new idea that I've thought about, but I need to research it and see, is the Small Business Administration the conduit through which you would develop or propose regulations to allow those things to exist, or is it a public-private partnership? That I don't know.
Okay.
But I'm going to figure it out, because that's how we keep the Georgia 9th vibrant, is keeping these small businesses going. I don't know how much time I have left, so do we have time for another question? Did somebody?
You got about 3 more minutes.
Does anybody have a 5-second question? Oh,
I'm trying to make it 5. My question has to do with something that we hold dear here in Fannin, and I think throughout the 9th District, regardless of whether we're Democrat or Republican or Independent,
Great.
and that is our national forests, our public lands, the beauty that surrounds us, whether we are birders or hikers or hunters or conservationists, we all love that and hold dear. You really didn't go into that, I'm sure, because of time,
Yes.
but if you would address that issue as well as a former EPA person.
sure. The reason I'm smiling is like, oh, give me a softball. Again, I've been an environmentalist since the 60s and all that. My read on the whole issue of the development of the wildlands and things like that is all about big business wanting to come in and make money. And the way they're able to do that is the combination of controlling state legislatures, which allow them to help elect people to the U.S. Congress who write laws that open things up. And they force people like me, who were line staff at EPA, they force us, this would be at the, it wouldn't be an EPA thing, it would be, forced, but to write regulations that somehow get that little toe in. Oh, we just want to do a bike path. That's all, just a bike path. And then pretty soon it's like, well, what we could really use is a slightly bigger path and a slightly bigger path. And then pretty soon it's a road. And then it's, well, we need infrastructure and all of that. It's the way you solve this problem, in my opinion, is you take care of the U.S. Congress. Because they're the ones who write the laws that allow these things to happen, that force the bureaucrats to write and rewrite regulations that open these places up. And then there's just no stopping it. Most of the things that are wrong in this country, at the macro level, are U.S. congressional problems. Actually, not even presidential problems. They're U.S. congressional problems. They're the ones with the purse strings. They're the ones who say, these are the rules we want written, and all of that. So if you elect more Democrats to Congress from the 9th, or from some other place, if you help other people elect Democrats to other positions in other states, you will get the result you want. You'll get, and all that we're doing at this point is trying to protect what's already there. The threat is from Congress. And you've just seen that when they change the boundaries of some of the national parks or national monuments or want to eliminate them. This is all about money. You get money out of the Congress by voting Democrats. And I know you're going to say, well, Democrats get money too. Yeah, but if you look at the difference between how Democrats vote, irrespective of money, and how Republicans vote because of the money, then you will understand why you need to have more Democrats in Congress. I hope that kind of sort of answers your question. At least that's my feeling.
David, your time is up, but I want to say this to both you and Josh, is that you're welcome to stay here after our meeting and talk, and anybody can ask you questions at all, but we try to keep it within a certain period.
I'm fine. See, he's outside of my, line of vision, so if he was waving saying, shut up, I didn't see it, because the question
Well,
came
we
forward.
didn't, I asked everybody not to bring rotten tomatoes.
Appreciate that, more than you know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.